Hello everyone, this is David Pickering of Mid-Ohio Food Bank doing my Tableau Data Fellowship case study. The Tableau Data Fellowship was made possible by a grant from the Tableau Foundation to the Feeding America Network, and I was one of the 12 food bankers chosen to be a part of the program. So let's go ahead and get started. So the basic part of my talk here, so I'm going to give you the basic part of my talk, kind of the intro. So, the fellowship really helped me by, leapfrogging my skills multiple times during the fellowship. It gave me the structure to keep, accelerating my learning. It got me re-engaged with Tableau in different new ways multiple times. And it also allowed me, to hone my skills by being exposed to my peers, and also just having the opportunities to either research and answer techniques, or questions that they were having, and as well as to tap a small network of people trying to do similar work with similar data sets to analyze our industry. The last thing the fellowship did for me was it really pushed me to learn more about the Tableau software, and also to just come to realize the kind of near infinite combinations that you can come up with Tableau, and all the things that you can do with the software. So the deep history of my work with Tableau, basically I originally saw Tableau Public back in 2012, and unfortunately I didn't really get what the software was used for and what it was all about. After that I spent a little bit of time working with software like Excel, and I got pretty good at doing what I working with kind of spreadsheets in Excel, and then figuring out how to just basically summarize data and make like little, almost like mini databases in effect. And then I encountered MySQL and began to work with full-on real databases and those full-on relational database concepts. But unfortunately, my ability to extract information really outstripped my ability to analyze information and to visualize it. And so I could make any number of charts through Excel. I began working with an online charting library called HighCharts, and making a lot of things there that I really liked. But I was just kind of stuck, and there really weren't great ways to move on. So enter Tableau. And so the Tableau Data Fellowship, started with, kind of studying on our own, and then we were getting ready to come together for a training in Chicago. And so I had been pretty anxious before the training. I was, pretty heavily reliant on the Show Me feature, so I would kind of pick the fields I was interested in, and then I would look at Show Me and see what it could do. And in this chart is actually a real example. I pulled some of my very early work, and I looked at who I made a chart, and I did such a bad job. I didn't even put a title on it. I'm using captions down at the bottom. I didn't format my labels. Kind of unnecessarily using maybe using some color. There's some other techniques I could use. And kind of all that was is kind of indicative of I didn't really know a whole lot. So we got to Chicago, so a training made possible by the Tableau Data Fellowship, and I kind of was able to graduate from just clicking around and guessing and using the Show Me button to purposefully constructing that viz that I had envisioned. And so the fellowship and the training, the conversations around it, so they helped me, really better grasp those core Tableau concepts. Stuff, is old hat now. It's like continuous dates versus discrete dates, dimensions versus measures, continuous versus discrete fields, within and outside of the date realm, and also just, being exposed to some calculated fields as well. I was also exposed to new kinds of vizzes. So, there's the example that continuous versus discrete months. So, showing year-over-year growth, growth within a month, learning about heat maps, learning about scatter plots, and, even, kind of some funky ones like a lollipop chart. I was able to pretty quickly take, that new skill set that, had fleshed out. I learned some in the basics on my own. I learned a lot more from this first training in Chicago. And then I was really thankfully able to apply those pretty immediately to a conference presentation. And so, with that new skill set, I used those techniques and I prepared analysis of some data that, I really hadn't been able to visualize before. And, on the top left, I'm looking at, kind of the distribution of when clients will use food pantry services in a month. The one on the bottom left, I'm looking at kind of how food flows throughout my food bank service territory and how it does or doesn't leave the county that that we send the food to. And then, also looking at, kind of a very early mapping technique using latitude and longitude. So I had a lot of success with that conference presentation, and then I kept learning new things. I would use Tableau occasionally for projects, but what I thought was a pretty good skill set in Tableau, I went to this intermediate training, and this time I learned that there was a whole lot more in the run up to that training. So I had done, started expanding, back in the same data sets, just getting bigger in scope. So, this is client data analysis of over 400,000 data points. And it's just mapping and kind of coloring the points by zip code so you can see how people distribute across the city. I also, came up with a pretty good template for a methodology to look at the data for a single agency. And so on the bottom left, it's kind of looking at the different services that this one agency provides and then the value of those services. So you can see the, kind of value across time, and then you can look at the, the number of records recorded too. So is it a high volume or a high dollar, or is it a low volume, high dollar service? And then the one at the top right, is just kind of basic service territory distribution, using kind of a built-in Tableau zip code map, and then also using kind of still that early that early latitude longitude technique. And I was also able to build a prototype for analyzing a spreadsheet of some produce market data points. And so there was a spreadsheet managing this business process, and you really couldn't learn a whole lot from it without a lot of manipulation. So I hooked up Tableau to it, and within 20 minutes I had been able to make stacked bar charts showing distribution by these different programs. I was able to make a simple map about where we're having these events, and I was also able to to even make a dashboard showing, okay, in this month, on this day, where are we having, these resources pop up? And so, this work actually showed such promise to my food bank that it actually turned into a full-on project. And so now we have a full-on subsystem. We can get additional accountability, trackability, and insight to over $40 million worth of assets on an annual basis. So all from just that little seed that Tableau was able to plant in everyone's mind that there was a slightly different way that we could do this business process. So leading into the intermediate training, I had done, some more with that same skill set, but I was ready for the next thing and, making even more dynamic and useful things. So, I learned definitely a few new techniques. Parameters were a big one. Quick table calculations, dynamic dimensions, and dynamic measures. So once again, these are techniques that, first off, I didn't even know were possible, much less have any exposure on how to do them. And then through the training made possible by the Tableau Data Fellowship, I was actually able to be exposed to and to learn these. So. And I was even proud that I was able to learn enough about parameters that I was able actually to present back to the group of my peers in the Tableau Data Fellowship. Exploring just the basics. What are parameters? What are some pros and cons? When do you use parameters? And then stepping through a couple practical examples, some basic setups, and then trying to show some other examples as well. And so, building off of this, parameters here, these are a few examples. So, you can use a parameter to control, like the color and detail of marks. So we can show, the one on the left, I can show kind of pounds of product by regulated, if it was regulated or not. And then I can do that same, pounds data, but break it up by order. So if you have, so it's a way to just see multiple orders that pop up. You can use it to control a date range, so you can do things like change, say from years to kind of some more context-based things like this year and last year, or 2 years ago, or, this fiscal year, so you can really, give your users something to interact with that, before they would have to kind of figure out based on, just based on what the chart said. The last piece I want to highlight for talking about the data fellowship is mapping. So the first, mapping I did was, I took, what I had learned from parameters and calculated fields and, just the core concepts behind Tableau Works, and I was able to apply that to some mapping work that I had been doing. And I think we've developed, I'm trying to humbly refer to it as an uncommon, if not novel, mapping technique. What that really means is I have not seen this example anywhere else, but that doesn't mean we're necessarily the first ones to come up with it. So the basic way it works, these are there's different methods that you can use to round your latitudes and longitudes to different points, and you can accomplish a couple things with it. Basically, you can get more. You can get some aggregation of your data, and you can protect the privacy of your data. So in our world, we don't want to expose the addresses of the different clients we're serving. But we do want to aggregate the data and better, be better able to understand it. And so, these are, dynamic multi-granularity maps. Each of these screenshots came out of the same map. It's just all controlled with a parameter, and, it enables more input. Behind the scenes, these are driven by, kind of a complex network of calculated fields and parameters, and just those are things that, I really wouldn't have learned about and been exposed to if it wasn't for, the Tableau Data Fellowship. These are some other examples too. So the technique works really well, with those other granularities, within zip codes or within a county. But then when you need to get a little bit bigger, you need to, that can be a bit of noise in your data. So, you can even group the information up further, and you could even go as far as to, to group it for multiple states or, for a nation. Another bright spot for me in my Tableau learning was when Tableau added shapefile support. So actually within hours of the 10.2 release, I had actually found, I'd found out about it, and I'd found out about the shapefile support, and I uploaded, some of my data sets that we had worked with and done some techniques with an ArcMap. And we're able to replicate that and really add quite a bit of value to it, and that was just within a few hours. And the other piece is Tableau solved a pretty big thing that I had been struggling with, and that is basically it's kind of scaling a polygon to some kind of measure instead of to the area of the polygon. So what that looks like is, say Ohio here, you look at how these are filled in or not, it looks like there's a lot of red. The truth is, if you look at that, population behind it, it's actually much lower than, say, the orange or the light orange and yellow, something that, can come through a little bit better in, kind of when you're scaling that polygon. Comes through even better when, you're doing it kind of down at that single county level. So just Tableau gave me a technique to refine something that we had used for about 2 years and make it just that much better. Within a few days, we built off of what we learned from the first exercise, and we did this like a novel geoclustering exercise. And so this was we're grouping parts of a county together based on tract in order to kind of carve up the data and make it easier to analyze. And so within a few hours of doing that, then the chart or the visual on the left, we made the visual on the right, and that was actually joining the client data back against our geoclustered data, and then able to get all the stats derived from those different data points in the context of the one geography. So really, in my mind, Tableau adding shapefile support kind of eliminated the last hurdle for me, fully embracing Tableau and, made it my, my single go-to analytics platform. So this, these couple pieces here weren't directly connected to the fellowship, but they're definitely a result of, kind of the full year of learning and, training and attention I got from the fellowship. So thank you, everyone, for making that possible. I would like to take a little bit and talk about some of the challenges that Tableau, hasn't presented but hasn't solved for my organization. So I guess first off, has Tableau changed my analytics life? So the answer there is no. I think the more I've been at this kind of work, I've seen that tools don't change our work, processes do. And so like many organizations, mine just has kind of a analytics process issue. So there's an interest in seeing visuals and seeing analysis, but there's a big structural issue that remains, and that's basically analytics versus eminence-based decisions. And so we can produce analysis, but we have trouble getting adoption by end users. So Tableau does does offer kind of a bright future for this method, though. And basically, Tableau will present a much easier and quicker and from a time perspective, cheaper way to produce analysis. And so the more things we can get out, if 10% of them only stick, if it's a volume issue, then, we can churn out more analysis so we can get more insight and adoption, across the organization. So to help make that happen, basically I'm going to keep training myself, going to keep Googling and finding things, going to keep interacting with my peers, that I met through the Tableau Data Fellowship. I'm going to keep trying to produce more interesting, more insightful, and more useful data products, and I'm also going to regularly release kind of new analysis. There's also some kind of standard tools and products that folks want to be using in the network. So I'm going to, implement a kind of routine cycle of Tableau Reader updates, and also find a few core data products that are continually updated that people can look at and get their own analysis out of. And like I mentioned before, we'll keep using Tableau as a rapid prototype generator, and hopefully that'll keep kicking off more and more great projects. So thank you to Feeding America for coordinating the Data Fellowship, and thank you to the Tableau Foundation for making Tableau possible for our network, and making the fellowship possible for the network as well. I can say that really has the analysis I produced in the last year is a whole order of magnitude better than what I would have produced without Tableau and without the fellowship. So thank you all for your time.